Some players just play the game. Others change it forever. Some become so feared, so dominant, that the NFL itself has no choice but to step in and rewrite the rules. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 1970s, that man was Mel Blount. He wasn't just a cornerback. He was an enforcer, a nightmare for wide receivers, a player so dominant that the league had to invent an entire rule to contain him. This is his story. Welcome to Black and Gold Legacy, the channel where we honor the triumphs, heartbreaks, and unforgettable legends of Steelers history. If you bleed black and gold, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow fans, and subscribe so you never miss another chapter of Steelers lore. This is the untold story of Mel Blount, the most feared legend in Pittsburgh Steelers history. From Vidalia to the gridiron, Mel Blount's journey began far from the bright lights of the NFL. He was born on April 10, 1948, in Vidalia, Georgia, a small town better known for its sweet onions than football stars. But Mel's childhood was anything but sweet. Growing up in the segregated South during the 1950s meant daily struggles. Opportunities were few, and prejudice was everywhere. For many young men, the path forward was limited. But hardship has a way of forging toughness. And for Mel, those early years built the foundation of a man who would one day strike fear into the entire NFL. As a boy, Blount towered over his peers. Strong legs, broad shoulders, and a natural athletic gift made him stand out from the start. Coaches quickly noticed this wasn't just another kid from Vidalia. This was someone with the potential to go far beyond the small-town gridiron. In high school, his size and speed made him a force. He wasn't just good, he was dominant. And that dominance earned him a chance to play college football at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. College football career, building the beast. At Southern University, Blount's gifts reached their full bloom. While most cornerbacks of the era were small and quick, 5 feet 10 inches, maybe 180 pounds, Blount looked like he belonged with the linebackers. He stood an intimidating 6 feet 3 inches and 205 pounds. But what made him terrifying wasn't just his size. It was that he could move like a man half his build. He had the agility of a sprinter, the instincts of a ball hawk, and the strength of a defender who relished contact. Wide receivers weren't ready for someone who could both outrun them and outmuscle them. His coaches at Southern saw something revolutionary, a cornerback who could completely erase receivers from the game. Quarterbacks at the college level learned quickly not to test him. If they did, the result was often a tipped ball, an interception, or a receiver lying dazed on the turf after trying to escape Blount's jam at the line. By the late 1960s, NFL scouts were buzzing. Who was this giant cornerback, shutting down everyone in the Southwestern Athletic Conference? Could his game translate to the pros? When the 1970 NFL draft arrived, the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team beginning to rebuild its identity under head coach Chuck Noll, saw the answer. In the third round, 53rd overall, they took a chance on the big defensive back from Southern. At the time, few realized it, but that single pick would go down as one of the greatest draft steals in franchise history. The Steelers had just landed the man who would redefine cornerback play forever, becoming the enforcer of the steel curtain. When Mel Blount entered the NFL in 1970, the Pittsburgh Steelers were a team in transition. Under head coach Chuck Noll, the franchise was transforming from decades of mediocrity into a powerhouse. Draft after draft, they were assembling the pieces of a dynasty. Terry Bradshaw at quarterback, Franco Harris in the backfield, and defensive titans like Mean Joe Green, Jack Lambert, and Jack Ham up front. But the secondary needed its anchor, and that anchor became Mel Blount. From day one, Blount played cornerback unlike anyone before him. Instead of dancing backward and giving receiver space, he attacked. At the snap, he turned football into hand-to-hand combat. His signature move became the bump and run. Picture it. The ball is snapped, the receiver takes his first step, and then boom, Blount's massive frame slams into him. Shoulders rattle, timing shatters, routes collapse before they even begin. Sometimes receivers barely moved 5 yards before the play was dead. Quarterbacks noticed. Throwing to Blount's side meant risking disaster, either a deflection, a brutal jam that ruined the play, or worse, an interception. By 1972, The Steelers had made the playoffs for the first time in decades, and Blount's emergence was a key factor. By 1974, he was a full-fledged star, locking down opponents and allowing the steel curtain defensive front to terrorize quarterbacks without worrying about the deep ball. And then came 1975, the season that defined Mel Blount's legend. That year, he recorded 11 interceptions, one of the greatest single-season totals in NFL history for a cornerback. His dominance earned him the title of NFL Defensive Player of the Year. Think about that. In a league dominated by pass rushers and linebackers, it was a cornerback who stood above them all. Blount wasn't just shutting receivers down. He was erasing them from the game. The Steelers rode his dominance to yet another Super Bowl victory, cementing their reputation as the team of the decade. And through it all, Blount stood as the terrifying shadow on the edge of the defense, the man no receiver wanted to face, the rule they had to invent. By the mid-1970s, Mel Blount wasn't just a cornerback. He was a one-man wall against the passing game. Receivers lined up across from him and often looked defeated before the ball was even snapped. Quarterbacks scanned the field and thought twice before throwing in his direction. But with Blount's dominance came frustration, and not just from opposing players. Wide receivers complained bitterly to coaches. Coaches stormed into league offices. They argued that Blount's brutal bump-and-run style was destroying the passing game. Games were becoming grinds of defense, and fans were seeing fewer big plays. The NFL, always mindful of entertainment value, faced a choice. Let defenses continue to suffocate offenses, or tilt the balance toward the passing game. In 1978, the decision was made. The league rewrote the rulebook. From that year forward, defensive backs were forbidden from making contact with a receiver more than 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. This rule became forever known as the Mel Blount Rule. Think about that legacy. Most players dream of winning championships. Some dream of making the Hall of Fame. But how many can say the league itself had to change the laws of the game because of them? Blount could. And the irony, the rule designed to stop him didn't actually end his dominance. Blount adapted. He adjusted his footwork, refined his technique, and continued to frustrate receivers across the league. Even stripped of his most devastating weapon, he was still an elite defender. The NFL might have changed the rules, but it couldn't change who Mel Blount was. A force of nature in black and gold. The Dynasty years and championships. The late 1970s belonged to the Pittsburgh Steelers. No team in NFL history had ever dominated an era quite like them, and Mel Blount was one of the cornerstones of that dynasty. With the steel curtain defense up front and Blount patrolling the secondary, the Steelers became nearly unbeatable. Running against Pittsburgh was a nightmare. Passing against them, even worse. Receivers dreaded facing Blount, and quarterbacks knew their windows were razor-thin. Between 1974 and 1979, the Steelers captured 4 Super Bowl titles, 9, 13, and 14. Each championship showcased the balance of their roster: Bradshaw's arm, Franco Harris's legs, Lynn Swann, and John Stallworth's acrobatic catches. But none of it would have been possible without the suffocating defense, and Mel Blount was its lock on the outside. Blount's consistency was staggering. Game after game, year after year, he delivered. By the end of his career, his resume spoke volumes. 4 times Super Bowl champion, 5 times Pro Bowl selections, 2 times first-team All-Pro, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 1975, 57 career interceptions, still a Steelers franchise record. Blount didn't just fill a role, he defined it. When fans thought of the steel curtain, they thought of a wall of defenders. And standing tall in that wall was number 47, the man who erased wide receivers from existence. For Pittsburgh fans, Blount wasn't just a star. He was a symbol of the black and gold, tough, relentless, and uncompromising. Every time he stepped on the field, he carried the grit of the city on his shoulders. The Dynasty years ended with Blount cemented as one of the most feared and respected players in football history. Life after football and legacy. By the time Mel Blount retired in 1983, he had built a resume that few defensive backs in history could ever touch. 57 interceptions, still a Pittsburgh Steelers record. 4 Super Bowl rings, 5 Pro Bowls, two-time All-Pro, and of course, the infamous rule that bears his name. But Blount's story didn't stop at the final whistle. Off the field, he carried the same toughness, leadership, and compassion into a new mission, building futures for others. After hanging up his cleats, Blount founded the Mel Blount Youth Home, a program dedicated to providing shelter, guidance, and opportunity for young boys in need. For many kids who faced the same hardships he did growing up in the segregated South, Blount's Youth Home became a lifeline, a place where discipline, structure, and mentorship could change the course of their lives. He didn't just dominate on Sundays. He gave back every other day of the week. That's what separated him from so many legends. His impact stretched beyond the gridiron. In 1989, Blount was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Standing in Canton with a gold jacket on his shoulders, he wasn't just a former player being honored. He was living proof of what resilience, determination, and dominance could create. Today, when fans debate the greatest cornerbacks in NFL history, Mel Blount's name is always there. Some argue about stats. Some argue about rings. But with Blount, the argument ends with this. He was so dominant that the NFL had to change the rules to keep the game fair. His legacy is not only in the Steelers trophy case or the record books. It lives in the very fabric of modern football. Every time a wide receiver runs untouched beyond 5 yards, that's Mel Blount's mark. Every time a cornerback lines up and studies how to adapt without constant contact, that's Mel Blount's influence. And for Steelers Nation, he will always be more than a Hall of Famer. He is the symbol of black and gold toughness, fearless, relentless, and unforgettable. Mel Blount wasn't just a cornerback. He wasn't just a champion. He was a force of nature, a man so feared, so dominant, that the NFL itself had to invent a rule just to contain him. That's not just greatness, that's legacy. He left behind 4 Super Bowls, a record 57 interceptions, and a Hall of Fame career. But his true legacy goes beyond numbers. It lives in every cornerback who studies the art of coverage. It lives in every wide receiver who lines up knowing the rules protect him. And it lives in the lives of young men given hope at the Mel Blount Youth Home. This has been Black and Gold Legacy, the channel where we honor the legends, the heartbreaks, and the unforgettable stories of Steelers history. If Mel Blount's journey inspired you, don't forget to like this video, share it with Steelers Nation, and subscribe so you never miss another story from the Black and Gold. And now, we turn to you. Where does Mel Blount rank among the greatest Steelers of all time? Let us know in the comments below. And together, let's keep his legacy alive.